Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, whenever you happen to be listening to another episode of the non-league Nosh. I am James. Sadly, I am not joined by my co-host Adam today. He, for whatever reason, childcare issues, cannot make today's podcast, which is a bit disappointing from his end, but I am delighted to say I am not alone. I am joined by ex-pro Luke Chadwick. Luke, how are you doing?
Yeah, not bad under the circumstances. A little bit bored at home, but other than that, all good.
It's an interesting time. I'm not going to say the name of the certain virus that is going around, because if I do, we get demonetized. But that's a story for another day. But how are you coping being at home? You know, all the time. Are you struggling with that kind of stuff, or are you happy to be in that, in that environment?
I wouldn't say I'm happy under the circumstances, but obviously it's a great opportunity to spend time with my family, my wife, my children. So obviously it's a terrible time. We haven't been affected that negatively by it in my family at the moment. So I'm enjoying spending time with my family, but at the same time, it'll be good to get back to some sort of normality.
Yeah, because I think that's what a lot of people are struggling with. We were talking about this the other day on another podcast. The kind of standard 9 to 5 for a lot of people, having that aspect of their life gone mentally. I know a couple of people are really struggling to cope with that. I mean, I suppose with your job that you're doing now, there's no way you can be doing that from home, is there? Or is there any parts of that you can do, really?
Not really. There's little bits and pieces we can still put some work in place for when we go back. But like you say, I think what a lot of people struggle with is that routine. Life does turn into a routine for you, and at times when you haven't got that, you feel a little bit lost. So it's certainly a challenging time for everyone.
Definitely. Well, I've got a few topics that I want to go through with you today. I want to talk about your overall career, what you're doing now. We'll touch on that in a little bit. But something that we always do on the podcast is we do a couple of opening questions to kind of get to know you a little bit. They're just selections of questions that you just have to pick one or two choices, etc. So let's start off with pub, club, or bar.
Pub, I think. I'm old school. Pub for me.
Good man. Chinese or Indian?
I'd go China. I like them both, but I'd probably go Chinese.
That is the right answer. Tea or coffee?
Tea. It would have been coffee last year, but I ain't had a coffee all year, so I'm just a tea man now.
I've had 3 today, so I don't know how you're doing it. Your favourite biscuit to dunk in your tea?
I'd say probably a club.
Wow, that's mad. Love that.
Really?
That's
You're
brilliant.
a fan yourself.
He's brilliant. Honestly, that question probably causes the most debate amongst the people who listen to this podcast. I'd love to see how they react to that. Instagram or Twitter?
I'd say Twitter. I'm quite new to it all, to be honest with you. I'm not a massive fan, I'd say. Obviously, it helps in what I'm doing now, but I'd say I'm more comfortable on Twitter. I don't really understand Instagram that much.
It does take a little bit of getting your head around, to be honest. Favourite artist or band? Do you have one?
Band? I'll probably say Oasis. They were big back in my day when I was growing up. So
yes, what a shout. Favourite TV programme? I suppose there's probably a lot of time for that at the moment, isn't it, really?
Yeah, I'm not... That's a tough one, really. I'm sort of got 2 teenage boys, so I'm sort of sucked into the whole Love Island lifestyle and all that sort of thing. So I watched that SAS one with Ant Middleton. I like that. That was a good one.
I'm yet to watch the final episode of that. I've got it on the Skybox. I am ready to watch it, so don't tell me who wins. Favourite film?
Favourite film? That's a tough one. I'm a massive fan of Will Ferrell, so it'd have to be one of his, possibly Step Brothers. I'd go as my favourite one.
Yeah. Anchorman for me, probably.
Yeah, that's up there.
Yeah, that's just an absolute classic. Cats or dogs?
Dogs all day.
Good man. Sky or BT?
I'd say Sky, but all we've got them and it's BT because my wife cancelled the Sky to save a bit of money, so I'm stuck with BT now. But
it's just like our household. It's just like our household. Other than football, favourite sport? Do you have any other sports you tend to follow, keep an eye on?
I quite like cricket. Would be my one.
Yeah, that is very popular amongst a lot of the guests that we've had on. To be honest,
yeah, I've watched a lot of cricket in the summer. I live in a picturesque little village in South Cambridge. I live next to the village of Barrington, so I go over there and enjoy sitting on my chair and spending a day watching the cricket.
Happy days, happy days. Now, some of these next questions I normally ask are questions that our guys over on Twitter have been asking you. So I'm going to save those until a little bit later on. But I like some of the answers. The club one on there and Oasis. Oasis probably is my favourite of the answers on there. Thanks for doing that. So let's go through some of the agendas that we're talking about this evening. We have got, thoughts on the season being cancelled at a non-league level, and there's a little bit more I want to talk about in terms of the EFL. Where does that leave the EFL clubs and also Premier League? And there has been, I think, some rumours going around about a potential restart for the EFL, so we'll talk about that. And then we'll get a little bit into your career and kind of what you're up to at the moment. But the main talking point on this show has been for the past few weeks, the decision at non-league level for steps 3 to 7 for the season to be completely finished. No promotions, no relegations. The season has just been completely scrapped. Although step 1 and step 2, there's still to make a decision on. It's caused so much debate, and especially considering the fact that the EFL season and the Premier League season has yet to there's been no decision at all made on that. What are your thoughts? And as a player, how would you feel if you were in that position that everything you've done this season is just counted for absolutely nothing?
Yeah, it's obviously, I'm sure everyone says there's bigger things happening at the moment than football, obviously, what's going on in the world. But at the same time, I do find it, I actually play for a team. I play for Barrington in the Cams League. We're in Division 2A, and I believe we're sitting pretty in second in the league, looking at promotion. I think there's a vote that's going on in them real low sort of local leagues where it will go on points per game, and there will be teams that go up and go down, etc.
Yeah,
I think I'm waiting on the vote of that. I understand why it's happened, because I don't see how in them leagues, sort of the non-league, how to be possible to fit the games in with obviously the lads work, they've got 2 jobs, they're part-time players, but I do think there is a way around it with the teams that potentially playoff games that could be put into place to settle relegation and to settle teams going up that have obviously adding great seasons to be in that position to go up. I completely understand how disappointing that must be for them. And I'm in my head, I think there must be a way around it. I can't see how they could possibly finish the league, but there must be time over the summer when this is all over to play some sort of playoff games, potentially the team that's top of the league playing a team that potentially could go down in a one-off playoff game where it could be sorted out. There must be a way around it, because it is so unfair for them teams that have had incredible seasons to not get their just rewards, really.
Yeah, I think what a lot of people are struggling to get their heads around is the fact that no other steps of football have made a decision or even had a meeting to say this is what is going to happen. And yet, as you quite rightly said, leagues below that and also above that, we're still in a position where we're waiting to find out what the next stage of the virus is going to be. We don't know where we stand as a society, let alone football side of things. So it's very confusing. A decision hasn't been made that early. I think that's really what's causing the most frustration.
Yeah, and then although it's hard to say, it does seem to think it is probably an easy option to just say it's all done. That's it. Where I mean, there'd be no harm, I don't think, in waiting another 3-4 weeks and seeing where we're at. Like I say, I think it's impossible for them sort of leagues that we're talking about for all the games to be played. I just can't see how that would be possible. But I think there is ways of getting around it in terms of teams that have got something to play for. Playing some sort of game to work it out. Yeah,
because the EFL, there have been rumours today circulating that they are talking of trying to get the Championship League 1 and League 2 to return playing on June the 6th, with games being played behind closed doors. Now, with that, it would involve pre-season beginning on the 16th of May if we are in a position where, you know, government advice pending, that can be done. So it's where do you kind of say that, you know, it's okay for the other leagues to continue behind closed doors, but yet because a decision has already been made, that's it. We can't do anything unless you want to go down a legal route. And let's face it, the money in non-league football, where is that going to come from for someone to go, actually, do you know what? We don't agree with this. We're going to go, right, we're going for the FA. Really, a lot of clubs are stuck, aren't they?
Well, that's a massive worry, I think, as well, in terms of these clubs. It's the same with the lower league clubs, even in the league. Where does this shortfall? How does it all end? Because there's not a good ending to clubs missing out on revenue for their final 4, 5, 6 home games of the season. Where does the finance come from going into next season? Unless there's going to be some sort of payment that comes down from the top.
Yeah, it's a difficult one. There's never going to be, I keep saying on this podcast, there's never going to be a right answer that's going to please everyone, because there are some clubs that are, you know, right down the bottom who are rubbing their hands at the moment. This is the best news that they've had. It's going to save them, you know, blah, blah, blah. But for a lot of clubs who are at the top, as you quite rightly said, it is a massive kick in the teeth. So I just don't know. It's such a difficult one. I don't really know how to answer it. What do you think ultimately would be the most, I suppose, way of wrapping this up? You've mentioned about the points per game. Do you see that as being the fairest way if we can't get a football season done?
I see it as a fairer way in the level where I'm playing, where it's just guys that go out and play on a Saturday because they want to play football. There's no money involved. It's just people playing because they want to play. Where you get up to where there's livelihoods, albeit semi-pro footballers, there's money, but I don't know if that would be the right way to do it. But at the same time, I can't see how the games could ever, like you say, the Football League, Championship League 1, League 2 can potentially do that because that's their job.
Yeah, they'll find a way.
Yeah. But then saying that, I don't see how financially, unless they're going to get a massive payment, how is that going to work? Because they're not getting their gate receipts. They're not getting anyone in the crowd if it's being played behind closed doors. It is.
That's the thing with the money that was sent down from the Premier League as an advance for the Championship clubs. They're going to receive the majority of that, but for League 1, League 2, and obviously for Cambridge as well, obviously, which is your club, gate receipts is a massive part of it. The turnover that comes on match day is the majority of people's income, isn't it? Really, as a club, you can't survive without that.
Exactly. Yeah, that's where and everything else that's going on that makes money and generates money for a club is not going on because of the situation we're in. So basically, there's no money going into these clubs whatsoever, and that's a massive concern, I'm sure, for all football fans, of how from the Premier League all the way down to the lower leagues, how's it all going to work out at the end of it? It's worrying times, but we always seem to find a way. Football finds a way.
Yeah, it always does. Very, very true. But as always, guys, what do you think? Let us know in the comment section. How would you think, or what do you think is the right way to be able to end this season? Do you agree with the points that we've made? Let us know down in the comment section. Luke, I want to move on to your career in the game. First of all, before we get into the moves and the transfers and all that kind of stuff like that, I want to find out how were you able to be in a position to be selected for Manchester United, considering obviously you're in, I believe you grew up in Cambridge, is that right? Or you're from Cambridge area?
Yeah, I grew up in Cambridge. I went to Melbourne Village College, which is sort of a little village between Cambridge and Royston.
Okay. So how did a trial come about for Manchester United? Where did that all begin? Where did you find out about the interest? And what was that experience like at such a young age?
When I was growing up, the big football that you played was schools football. So you'd play I played for Cambridge schools on a Saturday, and you'd play against other area teams. And then at the time I was on the books of Arsenal. So I'd play for Cambridge schools on a Saturday, then Arsenal on a Sunday. And I'd train once a week with Arsenal on an evening at Highbury in a little indoor area there during the week.
Yeah.
And then I was playing as a striker at the time when I was a kid, and I was scoring loads of goals at the Cambridge schools team and getting a bit of recognition. And then one day, someone told me that the Man United scout was coming to watch me, a guy called Ray Medwell, who was a massive part of my career and really helped me during them times. But he come and watched, was impressed with what he saw, and ended up going up in the school holidays where Man United used to take a lot of trialists. You'd stay in a hotel. There's probably about 7 or 8 of us from all over the country, people from Newcastle, Wales, because at the time, Man United they'd get anyone they wanted really, because at the time all the best young players went there. So I was probably about 14, just turned maybe 15 at the time, went up there, spent a few days training at the Cliff with other young players of a similar age, and then at the end of the trial was a game we played against Nottingham Forest at Littleton Road.
Right.
Played in the game, done well. And by the time I got home, I got the train home back to Manchester to Ely. It took bloody hours. Then from Ely to Cambridge, and Cambridge to Meldriff, and then finally got home. Yeah. And my mum picked me up from Meldriff train station, said she'd had a phone call from Sir Alex Ferguson, who was at the game at Littleton Road, and said that he wanted me to sign for Man United. So once I heard that, there was only going to be one team that I signed for. So I ended up signing schoolboy forms with Man United. And while I was in year 11 at school, I'd used to finish school early on a Friday and get the train up Friday afternoon, then be on the bench for the B team or the A team on the Saturday morning, and then stay over again and play for my age group team on the Sunday, and then come home. And that was how it was for while I was still at school before I signed a scholarship and moved up there permanently.
Can you remember that moment quite well then, when your mum told you that you'd had that phone call? What I can imagine the feeling. That must have been absolutely incredible.
It was. I thought she was messing about to start with. I thought she was having a laugh with me, but it was. It was incredible to hear that. It was like an incredible. And then after that, Arsenal wanted me to carry on there, so they came to my house, and Bruce Rioch was the manager at the time, and he came to my house in Meldriff, little village in Meldriff. He sat in with a youth development officer, and I had to say no to him, and that was probably the scariest moment of my life, doing that.
Yeah, I remember Bruce Rioch being Norwich manager, because I'm a Norwich fan myself. I remember his reputation. I've heard interviews that Ian Wright has done where he's talked about his time with Bruce Rioch. So I can imagine that would have been. What age were you then when that contract?
Yeah, to be honest, he was absolutely brilliant about it. I was only 15 years old, so
right, okay.
There wasn't that much animosity, really. I think he was just a bit annoyed that he drove all the way down to Cambridge and told I weren't going to sign.
So, wow, having the choice between Manchester United or Arsenal, that's... you like, talent-wise, you must have been absolutely incredible to have those two. Could have pulled it.
When I was at my best, 15, 16, it all went downhill from there. I was on fire back then.
So when you were on trial, were you still playing up top, or did they move you over to the right wing in that trial, or did that gradually happen as you went?
No, that gradually happened. I played striker probably until I was about after the second year that I moved up there. full time, I sort of got moved more on the wing. I think I was really fast when I was younger, and I got loads of chances, but probably missed too many of them to carry on playing as a striker. So they shifted me out wide. But I loved, absolutely loved it when I moved out on the wings. I've not really played there before, but I just loved running with the ball. And you got more chance to do that when you was sort of playing out wide.
Yeah. Was it just a bit more freedom to just be able to kind of express yourself and just kind of go at players when you're out on the wing rather than just being solely relied on up front? And sometimes you can be starved of the ball, I guess, can't you?
Yeah, definitely. I think it was to my strength as well, because I wasn't brilliant at holding the ball up. I was sort of skinny, really skinny, not the strongest. Probably didn't do as much in the gym as I should have done.
Yeah.
And I was it just suited me better, and it made me was a good striker to get signed for Man United. I don't think I would have ever have broke through or played any games there.
Yeah.
As a centre forward.
Yeah, and then I suppose you would go through the age groups, I'm guessing, get up to finally sort of like reserve football, etc., and then you'll break into the first team. Do you kind of remember having any conversations with Sir Alex going through those age groups? Did he ever come and talk to you guys and really kind of push you on, or was it more other coaches as you were going through the age groups?
The thing with Sir Alex Ferguson, he'd taken interest in everything, whether it was he'd know who everyone was, whether he was an under 15, under 16, or under. I spoke about him phoning my mum up that he wouldn't just do that for me; he would have done that for all the players. He wants to take that interest, and I think that's why he's so successful in, like, the best manager that's probably ever lived, because he'd take that interest and know everyone from the under 10s up to the tea lady. He'd treat everyone with the same respect, and that was probably the genius of the man, is the way that he built relationships with people. But he'd always, we used to play at the Cliff on a Saturday morning, so he'd always be in his office that looked down onto the pitch and watch the games, and that before he went off to Old Trafford for a home game. So he'd know who the players were that were coming through. I think I made my debut as a 17-year-old as a youth team player in the Worthington Cup, where he'd always tend to play a lot of the younger players to see how they coped. And it was, I remember the game, we played away at Aston Villa because Dion Dublin was playing. He was obviously a massive hero of mine growing up. He was playing. So I remember it well for that reason only, really. But we got beat 3-1, done okay. We was a really young team playing against a real strong Premier League team. So it was a tough night. But then after that, I weren't really around the first team and went on loan to Royal Antwerp in Belgium and spent 9 months out there. And it was when I came back from there that I really got my opportunity to be around and in the first team squad.
Yeah, so 2 parts from what you just mentioned there. First of all, the feeling that you have when you were playing, when you were in the changing room before the game, and then that moment of walking out onto Villa Park for your first team debut. What was that feeling like? That I can't imagine how you can describe it, really.
Yeah, it's just probably pure excitement, really. Obviously a bit of trepidation because you're looking around the dressing room and you're playing with the same lads that you play with on the Cliff on a Saturday morning against another youth team, really. There's only a couple of experienced players in there, but it's just that thought of actually doing it. I mean, when I was a kid running around my garden, I would have taken playing one game for Cambridge United at the Abbey. That would have been a dream come true. But to be going out to represent Man United in a first team game, obviously it's an incredible feeling. You probably don't appreciate it as much as a 17-year-old boy because it's just something that's happening, but still the excitement, I still remember it being so huge to be stepping on a pitch playing for probably the biggest club in the world at the time.
Some would probably argue still are today, to be honest, as well, yeah. And then you talk about that loan move. Do you kind of say that is a point where you, I wouldn't say had to grow up in so much extent, but loan moves are so crucial for young players. And everyone always says you need to get out and experience first team football for real, just to have that proper competitive edge in you? Do you think that was like the kind of like the turning point to then get you into the first team rather than just having these occasional sporadic cup games from time to time?
Yeah, obviously it was my time in Belgium was probably the best time I've ever had playing football. I was out there with a couple of the other youth team lads. It was sort of, you just feel so free. It was like we was invisible out there. We could do, the first time, obviously lived in digs in Manchester, it was just the three of us the first season. The second year my girlfriend moved out with me, but you just feel so, I felt anyway, so free. Like a lot of the time you don't understand what people are saying to you because it's a different country, and obviously they speak in Flemish. They do speak English at times, but it was just, I was playing well on the pitch, so no one felt like they had to say to that. And I just felt it was just playing with just pure freedom, really. And you start to feel like a real adult, I suppose, at 18, 19 years old. You're living in a different country. It was priceless in terms of my football career, going to Royal Antwerp, and in like a life experience in general. It just, like you say, you grow up quickly, but it's that freedom of, now I'm an adult, now it's up to me now. What I do is going to help me move forward in whatever I do.
Yeah, definitely. And then, so you had that spell out there, you came back, and then were you then kind of you were then involved in the first team, so to speak, or did you come back and do reserves and then move up to the first team? How did that kind of transpire?
So I went to Antwerp and after Christmas for one season, and we ended up winning the league and we was in the second division, getting promoted to the top league in Belgium. So after that summer, the club phoned me up and said, "Oh, we want you to go back out there to play, because it would be a higher level of football." So I was absolutely buzzing, because I didn't really want to go back to United and just play in the reserves. I didn't want to. This was playing in front of like 10, 15,000 every week. The fans were mad. There was fireworks going off and all that. It was just a brilliant atmosphere every week that we played. So when I went back and done really well for the first couple of months of the season in the Belgian first division, and then got the manager call me in to say, like, Sir Alex has been on the phone. They want you back in, Matt. And I was gutted, because I thought I was just going to go back and sit in the reserves at United. I'd just been at Antwerp long enough. So I was thinking, I was so crestfallen because we was doing so well at Antwerp and I was enjoying it so much. Yeah. Then went back to Manchester, and it was a time of the Worthington Cup. So went into a game away at Watford and we started that game and played really well. And from then, for the rest of that season, was just with the first team, travelled to all the games, started the occasional game, came on in a few games. So that was this season where I really had my real involvement with the first team.
Yeah. So looking back on that particular season, do you wish that Manchester United let you stay on for the full season, or do you think you kind of got an experience of both sides of things and that ultimately helped out? Which one would you prefer?
Oh, in hindsight, it was always, if I didn't have come back, I don't know if I ever would have played for Man United. Like at the time, I wanted to stay in Belgium, but when I come back and I went from playing in front of 15,000 to 70,000. So it was just, ended up being the right. They made the right decision. It was just in my head at the time that I thought I was going back just to play in the reserves, but it ended up not working out like that.
Yeah,
I would have loved to have stayed playing in Belgium or gone back there maybe afterwards, because I'd really enjoyed it. But it was the right decision to come and play, to get in a team at times at Man United, which you don't get that opportunity very often.
No, definitely not. And of course, with your time at Manchester United, you lifted the Premier League title. I mean, I've seen the picture of it. Again, just describe that moment. How did that feel? I've read an interview where you kind of talk about maybe not feeling as part, that you've done a huge amount to be worthy of it, or to kind of say you've been involved, etc. But you made enough appearances to get the medal and to lift the trophy. But what was that experience like for that whole season, being in and amongst the first team?
Yeah, it's really intense. Obviously, every day in training, it was the the standards so high, the players are so good. It was I was after the season finished, I was exhausted from. I didn't play many games, but I was just exhausted from the training and just trying to keep up with the standard of the squad and being on it every day, because it was completely different to anything I've ever experienced. Obviously, at Belgium, the standard wasn't like that at all in terms of you could have a training sometimes and just say, "Oh, have a rest because you got it." That had never happened at Man United because you had to be on it all the time. It was an amazing experience just to see them standards. I think being in the squad that year gave me what I needed to, not obviously I didn't make it at Man United, but to be a footballer, just taking some of them standards and the lessons that I've learned probably is what got me a career in a long career in football from getting that. I would say I weren't 100% comfortable at Man United. It wasn't, I loved playing football, but I didn't really like the other stuff that came with it. I never really wanted to be famous. I didn't really like, not comfortable with people knowing who I was and that sort of thing.
Right.
So it was I wouldn't change it for the world, don't get me wrong, but I can't say I was ever completely comfortable with it.
Is that why you probably, looking back, you think that the Belgium move and the loan move that you had out there, where you talked about the freedom of it, that kind of links in together really? When you're out there, you can just play football. And you know, you possibly might not have people coming up to you and asking you questions and talking to you and stuff like that. Whereas in Manchester, I can imagine most places you went, people probably knew who you were.
Yeah, but it was the same at I loved it at United when I was a youth team player as well. At Belgium, obviously, I didn't know what was going to happen. I didn't know what to expect really. When I went to Man United, I thought that it was an incredible opportunity, but I never thought I wanted to be a footballer, but I thought I'm going to have to do something pretty special to be a footballer at Man United. But it was the opportunity to obviously play for the biggest club in the world, and there is plenty of other teams to go through from there. Whereas if you start maybe at a lower club and you don't make it there, it's always going to be tough to stay in the game.
Yeah. And then you had a number of loan spells away from the club. I've got on here, you had I think 2 spells at Reading, one at Burnley, where you made a lot of appearances for them. What was that like, having gone from, you're lifting the trophy one minute, you're in and amongst the first team, and then you're then going out on loan moves? Was that something that you asked for to kind of get first team football? Or was that something that the club were really saying, look, for your progress, we need you to be, we want you to be playing as much as possible?
Yeah, I think by the time I went on them loan moves to Reading and then to Burnley, I think it was always known that I probably wouldn't go back into the first team squad at United. I think it was more a case of finding somewhere else. So after the second season, I suffered a lot of injuries in around my pelvis and groins, and I was never, what had made me stand out and get games in the first team was the fact that I was really fast and could run with the ball really well. I think after the injuries and operations I had in that second season, I never really had that amazing speed that was the main part of my game, really. So it was I was never going to be a Premier League footballer at Man United after them injuries took away probably the best part of my game at the time. So when I went to Reading, I was more than happy to go to other clubs because I still wanted to be a footballer. There's like I said, there's plenty of other clubs after Man United, and the fact that you'd been at Man United means that there is quite a lot of suitors and people that are interested in giving you the opportunity.
Yeah. So when you come to move away from Manchester United, then the move to West Ham comes through. In terms of the options available at the time, was that, do you feel the best one for you? What kind of clubs were after you at that point? Having, as you said, you've got Manchester United on your CV, you've got the title on your CV. You must have quite a few clubs going, we're going to take a chance on this boy.
Yeah, I think West Ham was by far and away the best option I had. It was, with me and my wife had our first child. We was up in Manchester and we didn't have that many people up there in terms of friends. We didn't have that much support. So I was always looking to get back to Cambridge. So when West Ham came in for me, obviously the manager was Alan Pardew, the same manager who took me to Reading when I went there on loan. So obviously knew him. West Ham's a massive club, great fan base, great atmosphere in the stadium. So it was a great move. I loved it at West Ham. I loved being there. It was so easy for me living in Cambridge, just up the M11, 40 minutes to training. So it was a good fit at the time.
Yeah. And then, so how, when you've had that full season, or that's the couple of seasons with West Ham, how did the move to Stoke come about then?
The worst thing that probably happened for me at West Ham was obviously amazing for the club, was that we got promoted to the Premier League.
Right.
So once we went up to the Premier League, they obviously they want to sign new players, and they went out and bought Yossi Benayoun, who was an absolute worldie of a player, unfortunately for me, which meant I was possibly surplus to requirements in that position.
Right.
So then the opportunity came up to go on loan up to Stoke and play under a Dutch manager who was Johan Boskamp, who saw me play a lot while I was at Antwerp. So the opportunity to go there. Stoke, it's a good club, big club. And again, I think as a footballer, you just want to play. So I didn't want to stay somewhere and just sit on the bench. I wanted to go and play. So I went up to Stoke.
Yeah.
Again, it's a brilliant football club. We went up on loan, signed permanently, and then my family moved up, and we never really settled up there. So again, I was really looking to be around my home in Cambridge, really. But I really enjoyed my time at Stoke.
Yeah. And then as a Norwich fan, the move then comes about where it was a loan spell, and then it went into a permanent one. You were signed by Peter Grant, I think it would have been at the time. Is that right?
Yeah. So again, Grant was the assistant to Alan Pardew at West Ham, so I had a previous relationship with him. I remember playing against Norwich at Stoke, scoring a goal, playing really well. I think we won 5-1 on the day. I think Grant had just taken over, and he spoke to me after, and it was Norwich again, an East Anglian club, massive club.
Yeah.
Great opportunity. Went there, was absolutely buzzing. Made my debut against Ipswich and just picked up a really, really serious injury.
Yeah.
On my debut. The club were absolutely amazing with me. The fact that I was on loan at the time, but they'd sort of said they'd sign me. They knew I was going to be out of action for a long time, but still signed me and looked after me so well while I was there. But it was just, it just never worked out at Norwich at all. I could never get myself properly fit after that injury. And it was a real shame, because I was absolutely delighted to get that move. Because obviously, like I say, to be back close to home and at a massive, wonderful football club as well, Norwich.
Yeah, because you scored in that game, didn't you?
Yeah, it couldn't have started much better. Scored in the derby, and then bloody ended up.
You're in folklore already, aren't you? Really, with that, let alone.
And then off in an ambulance to spending 3 nights at Ipswich Hospital after the game. So it was a bittersweet debut, that's for sure.
Definitely. You were at the time. You would have been at the time when Glenn Roeder was at the club as well. He gets a lot of stick from Norwich fans for his time there. What was it like working with him? Did you enjoy it working under him?
I wouldn't say I enjoyed it. Again, partly down to myself, because I weren't 100% fit. I weren't doing what I wanted to do. I never felt able to play at the level I wanted to play at.
Right.
But like Glenn Roeder's an incredible career in football that obviously I respect immensely.
Yeah, sure, definitely. You then have spells at, MK Dons. I think probably the MK Dons one, where if I just looking back on what I can see on here, you were voted player of the season there. You know, it seemed to be where you got your most appearances from, and where you had I would possibly say your most successful playing, run of games in there. what was that like moving to them? Obviously, at a time when they were just kind of newly being formed, and obviously there's still a lot of media attention surrounding them. From your perspective, what was your time like there?
Yeah, I loved it at MK Dons. Absolutely loved it. I loved the fact that it was new. It was something different. The stadium was amazing. It just felt, again, when I spoke to my agent, I sort of said I wanted him to go and speak to them because, again, without boring you, it was a great journey from my house in Cambridge, 45 minutes up the road. And it was brilliant. Loved my time at MK Dons. Really enjoyed it.
Yeah, and then the move to Cambridge as a being a boyhood Cambridge boy. What was that like?
So how it came about was I was not playing as much at MK. They had a lad coming through called Dele Alli who seemed to get my place most of the time, which was a bit of a pain. Yeah. And I knew that my legs weren't what they once were. So it was taking me longer to recover from games. I was playing in a lot of pain a lot of the time. And it was always my dream to play for Cambridge United. They're the team I supported, the team I used to go and watch when I was a kid. So I approached them and sort of said to them, do you want me to come and play for you?
Wow.
So fortunately, they said, yeah. And I went there and it couldn't have gone any better, really, in terms of we went up that season, was played at Wembley in the team that got promoted back to the Football League, and then another season in the league. So it was a great way, and I think it's not many people can say that they've done what they dreamt to do when they were a child. So I feel privileged, really, to have done something that I dreamt of doing.
Yeah. Would you say that was like the perfect way to kind of round off your career, so to speak? I know you had the spell at Soham, I believe, but would you say in terms of a professional club, was that like the perfect way to say, right, this is my career and this is how I'm going to finish it?
Yeah, Dad. I think I probably could have gone and played for another club after Cambridge, but it had got to the point where I didn't really fancy travelling around anymore. I just thought it was the last game I ever started in professional football was at Old Trafford against Man United in the FA Cup. So I thought that ain't a bad way to sort of end my career in full-time football. So it was a perfect ending. It was a great ending to play for the club that I supported.
I've watched a documentary with Gary Neville where he talks about there was that one performance where he knew that he just couldn't do this anymore, and that was the last performance he had. Did you kind of feel that in that Man United game? You just thought, do you know what, this is it. My body just can't. I can't keep up with this anymore. Or
certainly felt it against them, against some of the best players in the world. Potentially, I could still have maybe been effective for 20 minutes in League Two or something like that. But against Man United, I can't say that I had a huge impact in that game. To be honest. But it was just incredible to be on the pitch, really.
Yeah. So looking back on your career in the game, where would you say you were the happiest? Was there one point where you felt like this is it? Like, no, it can't get any, it can't get much better than this.
The best moment I ever had on a football pitch was scoring for Cambridge United up the Newmarket Road end. That was sort of
that's amazing.
The most emotional I ever felt on a football pitch, like the old hairs on the back of the neck, that sort of thing. So probably the happiest I've been in terms of playing football probably would have been in Belgium at Royal Antwerp. Yeah. And probably at MK Dons as well, because I was just settled then. I had a family. We were living at home, where it was a nice life that we had.
I suppose with the MK Dons situation, after having years of it being kind of stop-start and injuries playing a factor, etc., just to be able to get that consistent run of games as well. I can imagine as a footballer, just being able to do what it is that you love and just being able to have that enjoyment, that must have just been a fantastic point where you think, I'm finally playing. I'm actually doing what I enjoy, and it's happening on a regular basis as well.
Yeah, it's hard to sort of do that in football, because you never really, it's a strange industry where you never really have a look up and think, I'm really enjoying it. You can't really afford to be satisfied. You're always wanting to do more. I think it's easier looking back now that I'm not playing with it to see that it was a real good time in my career.
Yeah, definitely. And then let's talk about what you're doing at the moment, and then we'll move on to some of the Twitter questions that people have been sending in for you. The work you're doing now. How did that come about? And kind of for the guys at home who look at your Twitter bio and just see the titles that you've got on there, if I was interviewing you for a job and you had to describe your CV to me and what your kind of day-to-day role is and what it is that you do, what is it that you do? What is your day-to-day routines?
So when I finished football, I went into coaching and coached in the academy at Cambridge United, which was obviously great, but I never really, I don't know, I sort of fell into coaching, as it were. I don't know, I've done all my coaching badges, got all the qualifications, but I'm not sure it was ever a passion of what I want to do for the rest of my life.
Because a lot of people kind of go, well, am I going to do coaching or am I going to do punditry? Which kind of one do I get involved with if I want to remain in the game? Do you feel you kind of just, like you say, you just fell into the coaching side of it because it's what you've done?
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, definitely. Don't get me wrong, I really enjoy it. There's loads of aspects of it I really enjoyed doing, but I think the one regret that I've got in my life is that when I signed for Man Utd and I was at school, I'd never done the work. I just gave up in terms of, I'm going to be a footballer.
Really?
I ain't doing anything else, which is the biggest regret I've got, because I would have loved to be massively educated. Don't get me wrong, I'm not that old. I can still educate myself, but I'd love to have really educated myself at school. I'd really love to have educated myself more while I played, because obviously all this free time that I've got, because I'm not sure. I would have happier, I think, to come out of professional football and do something completely different.
Have a backup option.
Yeah, to do something different and use what I've learned in football as well, that obviously there's massive lessons you learn in professional football that you can take into other industries and it to help you with that.
Sure.
So now what I do is I'm part of a organisation called the Football Fun Factory, which is the two co-founders, Johnny Martin and James Cutting, asked me to come on board. And what we're trying to grow is an organisation it's not about really the kids becoming, it's so far removed from kids trying to become professional footballers. It's all about kids playing football to enjoy it, whatever level or ability they're at. It's just about coming to our sessions and having a smile on their face. And we try and promote sort of a good attitude, promote good life skills, where there'll be a blue card awarded at the end of every session. It won't be given to the best player who scored all the goals. It'll be given to the person that worked the hardest, showed the best fair play, just using football as a vehicle to promote everything good about life, really.
Yeah.
That's what we're trying to do, and we're trying to grow it so there's football fun factories everywhere, so kids can walk to football training. There's communities all over the country where kids can go and enjoy playing football for an hour, and there's no pressure on it whatsoever. It is just what it says.
Okay, so because I know somebody who works in the youth development at Ipswich Football Club, so it's not centred around classes aiming to get somebody to play for a certain team like Ipswich or a Cambridge. It's more just about getting people together and just giving them an opportunity to grow as an individual. It's so far removed from that. This is about, and it's like I'm completely out of my comfort zone, because all I've ever been involved with is professional football and then elite kids playing at academy. So it's an eye-opening experience, but I think it's such a breath of fresh air, really. I don't think there's that many things like it around. And I just it'll be interesting to see how far we get, but I think it is a really good thing that we're trying to do. How long have you been doing that particular role for then?
So I've been doing it. I've probably been out of the professional game about 6-7 months now.
Okay. Right.
So I've just like really focusing our efforts on that, of growing our, what we call it, everyone's got their own community. So my community is Melbourne, where I went to school. So I'm coaching little kids where I went to school, which is great. Bassingbourne, where my 2 kids have gone to school, and Combat, and we're all within 5 minutes of my house. So it's trying to be a positive role model in my community where I grew up, to get kids to fall in love with a game and keep on playing for the rest of their lives, whether they're massively gifted or they just like doing it.
Yeah. Because I suppose again, I'm going back to kind of an interview that you've done previously, where you talked about the enjoyment possibly being taken out of it whilst you were at Manchester United, because of the fact that I think it was you talked about a big contract coming at you at the time and you got distracted. Is this the perfect way of going full circle and just kind of teaching to these young guys, look, it's not about that. It's nice to have that, but at the end of the day, let's just improve. Let's just enjoy the game for what it is.
Yeah, and I think if you want to go anywhere in the game, then it's got to be something you love. Whatever you do, whatever you do, if you want to be successful in something, I think a massive importance of that is loving what you're doing.
Yeah,
that's got to be the basis of everything. Because if you love what you're doing, you're gonna work harder at it because you love doing it.
Yeah.
So I think it is an opportunity for me to try and give something back.
Yeah.
To the game that gave me everything, really.
Yeah. Any part of the game, the professional side of it, that you're missing at the moment? Are you any part of you that's kind of itching to get back at this point, or?
No, not really. It's something like, I think, like when you work in academy football, it's completely different to what I was used to as a professional footballer, where I'd be home at 2:00 waiting for Jeremy Kyle to come on. It's real demanding. It's a demanding industry where
targets
in terms of coaching as well, there's so much coaching going on that I think I want to step away from that a little bit and just see what else there is, because like I say, there's a massive world out there that I'm really interested in exploring, and maybe different avenues in the future. Maybe I'll be back in professional football in years to come when I get a passion back for it. But you don't know, do you? In this situation we're in now, it just makes you really reflect on where you're at, really, and what are the most important things to you.
Yeah, definitely. Well, I wish you all the best with that. Hopefully we can get over this kind of stuff all relatively quickly, and you can get back into doing that. It sounds like a fantastic project to be involved in. So yeah, I really hope that goes well. Now we're going to move on to Twitter questions, and then we'll wrap things up, Luke, if that's all right. I sent out a message on Twitter asking for people to get involved, leave their questions for you. So we'll go for a few of them. We've had Paul Granger ask, Jason Lee said the stick that he got from the fantasy football show back in the day affected his career adversely. Did you find the same? Now, I suppose this comes down to the amount of stick that he got and abuse. Looking back on things, it could be considered as a form of bullying or whatever you want to call it. But did those kind of things affect you? I mean, we briefly talked on the fact that your most successful and your happiest time was when you were out of the limelight, so to speak. So did those kind of things have an effect on the outside noises and stuff like that?
I remember, like, when it was all happening, it was a real shock, really, in terms of how do these people know who I am, really? Obviously, they know who I am because I'm playing for Man United, but it was just, maybe it was a little embarrassing, that sort of thing. Yeah. I always think about other people, so I think, how will my family feel about this and that sort of thing? I don't think it really, I can take, it didn't affect me that much, I wouldn't say, but it did worry me in the fact of, what does my mum think about this and that sort of thing. So
Did any of your family kind of talk to you about any of that stuff that was going on at the time? Did you talk to them?
Not really, because it was all it was quite a light-hearted things that were said and that sort of thing. Obviously, it was against me, but I wouldn't. It's hard for me to say. I didn't really like any of that side of things, so it was just another part of attention brought to me that I didn't really want, really.
Right. Okay. That's a good question, Paul. Thanks for sending that one in, mate. Really appreciate that one. We've got Ground Hopping Mick. Now, this guy does a lot of work around non-league football. He's an influencer on Instagram. So thanks, Mick, for getting in contact. He said, out of the clubs you've played for, who would you want to manage the most?
Who would I want to be honest, it's a hard question because I'm really not into it. I don't really want to be a manager.
That was going to be a second part question. Would you actually want to manage?
Yeah. So I wouldn't. Obviously, Cambridge is my team, but then
the pressure involved in managing your home team.
I wouldn't want to manage them because I'd probably end up getting a sack, and then where's that going to leave me?
If you had to pick one, just so I can keep Nick happy,
I'd say Southampton Rangers.
Good. Yeah, I like it. Safe answer. Nice one. James Bloomfield has asked the final question on here. Who is the best player or few players he's played with? Can't imagine this one would be an easy one to answer. No, how you pick one out of the players that you've played with. Let's kind of add something into that. Who was the best and who did you most enjoy playing with? Who was good for your game?
The best player I ever played with, and I always answer this, and I think everyone does, because like day in, day out, he's like a genius, is Paul Scholes.
Yes.
Like, I've never seen, and he could just do everything. He really, like, eyes in the back of his head. He could run a session playing one. Like, don't get me wrong, all the players, the majority of the players I played with at Man United were world class, but I'm pretty sure if you asked any of them, they'd say Scholes was probably the one that stood out that little bit more because, he was an incredible, so intelligent in everything he'd done. He was day in, day out. He was the best player in training, and on a match day as well, he didn't really let anyone down.
I can imagine you're probably just there in training half the time, just like, how the hell did he do that? Where did that come from?
But the favourite player for me to play with, the player I enjoyed playing with most was Teddy Sheringham. I played with him at Man United and West Ham, and the way that my sort of game evolved as I weren't as fast to go on the outside of it, I'd like to come inside and sort of bounce off players.
Right.
And Teddy was an absolute dream for that because you'd bounce it into him or play a ball. It didn't matter how hard you played it, and he'd just get it back to you exactly how you wanted it. And he was an absolute dream to come off the line and bounce a ball off because he'd always put it in the exact right spot for you.
Brilliant. I'm going to finish on two questions, and they're going to be from myself. Who's the hardest player you've played against? Do you ever think about one performance and go, God, that was tough?
When I always answer this question the same, because obviously at Man United, I was rarely in the team. So you do a lot of training where it'd be the team that's not playing against the starting team. And a lot of the time I'd play on the right wing. And the hardest player was Mikel Silvestre. I just found it
really
more or less impossible to get past him. He was so quick and strong. I just couldn't find a way of beating him. So he was. When I ever get asked that question, I always say Mikel Silvestre.
That's interesting. I think he's probably one of Man United's most underrated players, actually, when you think about it. He was just kind of forgotten about in that team, wasn't he, really?
Yeah, he was a brilliant defender, but it was just so sort of that 1v1 that was used to getting success at, particularly at the younger age. I could just never really get any success playing against him.
Yeah, definitely. And a final question then to wrap up this podcast, and I've thoroughly enjoyed it. Your best performance. What's the one performance of your career that you look back on and go, do you know what? I never got any better than that. Do you have one?
The better, you won't be happy with this. The best I ever played was probably for MK against Norwich at Carroll Road.
Oh, really?
We won. We won 4-0 in the Carling Cup or whatever it was when
God.
Norwich.
Yes, I remember that. I was there. That was
everything I'd done seemed to go right that night.
I remember being in the Lower Barclay watching that game. God, I've blocked that from my memory. Thanks, Luke.
I said you wouldn't be happy with that.
And the second answer, obviously, was the Norwich Ipswich game when you scored against them lot. That just that's right up there as well, isn't it?
Yeah, it ended so badly though. I don't like thinking about it.
Luke, absolute pleasure having you on the show. Thank you so much for coming on. Really, really do appreciate it. I'm going to put your link for your Twitter in the description. So if you guys know of anybody in the Cambridge area or of any other areas around the country where there are the football fun factories involved, go and check them out. See what it's all about, and then once all of this horrible situation calms down, you can look at that, and if you've got anybody that in your family or friends or whatever the case may be that wants to get involved, go and check them out, see what they're all about. You're involved in it, Luke. How do people kind of get involved? What is the process to do, for that really?
Yeah, so at the moment we've got loads of centres mainly around the Cambridge area. It's all on the website. It's all on the links on the Facebook page, Twitter page. So there's loads of ways of just having a look, really, seeing what you think. And if you've got a young little boy or girl who's got an interest in football and they want to get involved, then we'd love to have them. Yeah,
well, as I said, I'll put all of the links for that in the description. So if you know anybody, as I said, go and check that out. I'm sure Luke and those guys over there would really, really appreciate that. But again, thank you so much for coming on, Luke. Thanks for your time. I hope everyone in your family, friends, etc., are safe at this time. Just look after each other, etc. But again, pleasure. Thank you so much for coming on.
Thanks, James. Enjoyed talking to you.
Yeah, kills a bit of time, doesn't it? As always, guys, hit the like button, leave a comment, subscribe to the channel, all that jazz. And until we see each other next time, adios.